The morning sun cast golden rays through the windows of Lagos General Hospital, illuminating the plaques and certificates that adorned Dr. Raymond Okoro's office walls. At 42, he was one of Nigeria's most celebrated cardiovascular surgeons, a man whose hands had saved hundreds of lives. His reputation stretched beyond Lagos, reaching into the smallest villages where mothers whispered prayers that if their children ever needed surgery, Dr. Okoro would be the one to perform it. But success had its price, and Raymond paid it willingly, trading hours with his wife Maya for hours in the operating theater, exchanging quiet evenings at home for medical conferences in Abuja and Accra. His colleagues admired his dedication. His wife endured his absence. Maya Okoro had been a stunning bride 7 years ago, her traditional wedding ceremony the talk of their community in Lekki. She wore coral beads that caught the light, and when Raymond placed the ring on her finger, he promised her the world. For the first 2 years, he kept that promise. They traveled to Zanzibar for their honeymoon, built a beautiful home with a garden where bougainvillea bloomed in brilliant purple cascades, and talked late into the night about the children they would have. Then Raymond's career exploded. A successful surgery on a governor's daughter made headlines. International medical journals published his research. Invitations poured in from hospitals across West Africa, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, Maya became a footnote in her husband's impressive story. When Maya discovered she was pregnant, she wept with joy in their bathroom, clutching the positive test against her chest. This baby would bring Raymond back to her. This child would remind him what truly mattered. She planned how she would tell him, imagining his face lighting up, his arms pulling her close. But Raymond came home at midnight that day, exhausted from a 12-hour surgery. Maya had fallen asleep on the couch, the special dinner she'd prepared cold on the table, the pregnancy test hidden in her pocket. She told him the next morning as he rushed out the door. "Raymond, I'm pregnant." He paused, his hand on the doorknob, and turned to smile at her. "That's wonderful, my love. We'll celebrate this weekend. I promise." Then he was gone, his Mercedes disappearing down their tree-lined street. The weekend came and went. So did the next month. Maya's joy dimmed like a candle running out of wax. The fatigue started in her second month, a weariness that sleep couldn't cure. She would wake exhausted, as if she'd run a marathon in her dreams. Her limbs felt heavy, and climbing the stairs to their bedroom left her breathless. "Raymond, something's wrong," she told him one evening. He was reviewing patient files at the dining table, his reading glasses perched on his nose. "Pregnancy is hard on the body, Maya. It's normal to feel tired. Make sure you're taking your prenatal vitamins." He didn't look up from his papers. "But this feels different. I can barely. I have to finish these charts before tomorrow's surgery. We'll talk about it later." Later never came. Dr. Samuel Agui, a kind-faced colleague of Raymond's who specialized in oncology, noticed Maya's condition during a hospital visit. She had come to bring Raymond lunch, something she rarely did anymore, hoping to surprise him. But Raymond was in surgery, and Maya, feeling dizzy, had to sit down in the corridor. "Mrs. Okoro, are you all right?" Samuel approached her with concern, his white coat crisp despite the Lagos heat. "Just tired," Maya said weakly, trying to smile. "The pregnancy." Samuel's trained eye caught something more. The pallor of her skin, the way she couldn't quite catch her breath, the trembling in her hands. "How far along are you?" 4 months. "And Dr. Okoro knows you're feeling this way?" Maya's silence was answer enough. Samuel sat beside her on the bench, his voice gentle. "Mrs. Okoro, I think you should let me run some tests. This exhaustion might not be just from pregnancy." But Maya shook her head. "Raymond says it's normal. He's a doctor. He would know if something was seriously wrong." "Raymond is a brilliant surgeon," Samuel said carefully, "but he's also very busy. Please, let me help you. Just a few blood tests." Maya finally agreed, too tired to argue, too frightened by the concern in Samuel's eyes to refuse. The tests came back, and Samuel's face grew grave as he studied the results. He called Maya that evening, his voice urgent. "Mrs. Okoro, I need you to come in tomorrow. Bring your husband if possible." But Raymond was scheduled for back-to-back surgeries the next day, and the day after, and the week after that. So Samuel took it upon himself to care for Maya, driving her to appointments when Raymond couldn't, sitting with her through consultations with specialists, holding her hand when the news grew darker. Maya made Samuel promise not to tell Raymond yet. "He's saving a child's life next week. A little boy with a hole in his heart. I can't distract him with this. After the surgery, I'll tell him everything." Samuel wanted to protest, wanted to shake Raymond and make him see what was happening to his wife, but he respected Maya's wishes. So he became her support, her friend, the person who showed up when her husband didn't. The neighbors began to notice Dr. Igui's car in the Okoro driveway, Maya getting into his vehicle for afternoon appointments, the long conversations on their front porch. In Lagos, where everyone knew everyone's business, tongues started wagging. Someone mentioned it to Raymond at the hospital. "Your colleague seems quite close to your wife these days." The comment was casual, almost innocent, but it planted a seed. Raymond began coming home earlier, not to care for Maya, but to watch, to notice, to let jealousy grow where love had withered from neglect. He saw Samuel's car one evening, saw them talking in hushed tones by her car, saw Samuel squeeze Maya's hand before driving away. That night, Raymond couldn't sleep. He lay beside his pregnant wife, this woman he'd promised the world to, and instead of seeing her exhaustion, her pale skin, her trembling hands, he saw betrayal. He saw another man filling the space he'd abandoned. And his pride, his ego, his assumption that his wife would always be waiting patiently no matter how much he neglected her, twisted the truth into something ugly. Maya was 7 months pregnant when Raymond's suspicions exploded into accusation. The evening air was thick with humidity as Raymond drove home from the hospital, his jaw clenched so tightly it ached. He'd left his last consultation early, something he never did, compelled by a gnawing suspicion that had grown from a whisper to a roar in his mind. For weeks, he'd been piecing together what he thought was evidence. Samuel's frequent visits, Maya's evasive answers about her appointments, the way she'd grown distant and secretive. What Raymond refused to see was that his wife had grown distant because she was dying, and secretive because she was trying to protect him from the truth until she could find the right moment. But jealousy is a powerful lens that distorts everything it touches, turning innocent gestures into damning evidence. As he turned onto their street, Raymond's heart lurched. Samuel's silver Toyota was parked in their driveway at 6:30 in the evening, while he was supposed to be at work. Raymond parked his Mercedes carelessly, not bothering to pull it fully off the street. He strode toward his house, his doctor's bag forgotten in the passenger seat, his mind racing with accusations and betrayals. Through the window, he could see them in the living room. Maya was crying, and Samuel was holding both her hands, speaking intently. To Raymond, it looked like an intimate moment between lovers. What he couldn't hear, what he refused to imagine, was Samuel saying, "Maya, you have to tell him tonight. The cancer is progressing faster than we thought. You're 7 months pregnant, and we need to start treatment immediately after delivery. He needs to know. He's your husband. He deserves to know." Raymond burst through the front door like a storm breaking. The sound made Maya jump, her hand flying to her swollen belly protectively. Samuel stood quickly, his face professional, already preparing to explain. "Raymond," Maya breathed, relief and fear mixing in her voice. "You're home early. Good. I need to get out," Raymond snarled, but he was looking at Samuel, not his wife. "Get out of my house." Samuel remained calm, his voice steady. "Dr. Okoro, I understand how this might look, but you need to listen to your wife. She has something important to tell you." "I bet she does," Raymond laughed bitterly, advancing into the room. "How long has this been going on, Maya? How long have you been making a fool of me?" Maya's face went white, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Raymond, no. You don't understand. I understand perfectly." His voice rose, echoing off the walls of their beautiful home. I work myself to exhaustion, saving lives, building a future for us, and you repay me by sleeping with my colleague? In my own home. Dr. Okoro, you're wrong, Samuel interjected, his voice firm now. I'm here because your wife is sick. She needs. Sick. Raymond spun on him, fury blazing in his eyes. The only thing sick here is you, taking advantage of a pregnant woman while her husband is at work. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think I was too busy to notice? Raymond, please. Maya tried to stand, but her legs were weak, and she swayed. Samuel moved to steady her, but Raymond saw only confirmation of his worst fears. Don't touch her. Raymond grabbed Maya's arm, pulling her away from Samuel with more force than he intended. Maya gasped, tears streaming down her face. You're hurting me, she whispered, and something in her voice should have stopped him, should have made him see reason, but jealousy had poisoned everything. I'm hurting you. Raymond's laugh was harsh and cruel. That's rich, coming from you. How long, Maya? How many times has he been in our bed? Never. Maya sobbed, her free hand cradling her belly. Raymond, I love you. Samuel is just. Just what? Just a friend. Raymond's voice dripped with sarcasm. Is that what you're going to tell me? That he drives you around, visits you at home, holds your hands, and it's all innocent? Samuel stepped forward again, his voice urgent. Dr. Okoro, you need to calm down and listen. Your wife has stage 3 cancer. She's been trying to tell you for months. Cancer. Raymond turned on him with such venom that Samuel actually stepped back. You pathetic liar. You'd say anything to cover up your affair, wouldn't you? Using cancer as an excuse? How dare you? It's not a lie. Maya cried out, her voice breaking. Raymond, I have cancer. That's why I've been so tired. That's why Samuel has been helping me. He's an oncologist. He's been treating me because you were too busy to notice I was dying. The words hung in the air, but Raymond was too far gone to hear them. Too consumed by wounded pride and imagined betrayal to see the truth standing right in front of him. Too busy. His voice dropped to something dangerous and cold. I've been too busy saving lives while you've been here playing house with him. Tell me, Maya, is the baby even mine? The question hit Maya like a physical blow. She staggered backward, her hand pressed against her mouth, her eyes wide with horror and disbelief. How can you ask me that? She whispered. How can you think that of me? How can I not? Raymond shot back. You've been lying to me for months. Sneaking around with him. What else am I supposed to think? I haven't been lying. Maya's voice rose, desperation making her shout despite her weakness. I've been dying, Raymond. I've been dying, and you never once noticed. You never came home long enough to see me. You never asked why I couldn't eat, why I couldn't sleep, why I could barely walk up our stairs. But Raymond was beyond hearing, beyond reason. He turned to Samuel, his voice cold as ice. Get out of my house. If I ever see you here again, if I ever see you near my wife again, I'll destroy your career. I'll make sure you never practice medicine anywhere in Nigeria. Do you understand me? Samuel looked at Maya, his expression anguished, silently asking if she wanted him to stay, to fight this. But Maya shook her head slightly, tears streaming down her face. She knew her husband. When Raymond made up his mind about something, nothing could change it. Not reason. Not evidence. Not even love. I'm sorry, Maya, Samuel said quietly, gathering his medical bag. Please call me. Anytime. You have my number. He looked at Raymond one last time, disappointment and pity in his eyes. You're making a terrible mistake, Dr. Okoro. One day you'll realize what you've lost, and I pray you can live with it. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a soft click that sounded like a death knell. Maya and Raymond stood in their living room, husband and wife, strangers now in every way that mattered. The silence stretched between them, broken only by Maya's quiet weeping. "You're sleeping with him," Raymond said again, but quieter now, as if saying it enough times would make it true. "No," Maya whispered, exhausted beyond measure. "I've never been unfaithful to you, Raymond. Not once in 7 years. But you've been unfaithful to me every day, choosing your career over our marriage, your patience over your wife. And now, when I need you most, you choose your pride over the truth. Don't try to turn this around on me," Raymond warned. "You're the one who—" "I have cancer." Maya screamed the words, her voice cracking. "I have stage 3 breast cancer, and it spread to my lymph nodes. I found out 3 months ago. Samuel has been helping me because you were too important, too busy, too celebrated to notice your wife was dying." Raymond faltered, confusion flickering across his face. "You're lying." "I'm not lying," Maya said, her voice now eerily calm. "I have the medical records, the test results, the treatment plans. Samuel has been driving me to chemotherapy sessions while you were in surgery. He's been holding my hand while I vomited from the medication. He's been the one asking if I'm okay while you couldn't even remember to ask about our baby." "If that's true," Raymond said slowly, doubt creeping into his voice for the first time, "why didn't you tell me?" Maya looked at him, and in her eyes was such profound sadness that it should have broken through his defenses. "I tried, Raymond. I tried so many times. But you were always too busy, always rushing out the door, always more concerned with your next surgery than with your own wife. And I thought if I waited until after the baby was born, if I could just make it through the pregnancy, then we could fight this together. I thought maybe having a child would remind you why we fell in love in the first place." "So you kept it from me," Raymond said, grasping for justification. "You lied by omission. I tried to protect you." Maya's voice rose again, passionate despite her exhaustion. "You had that little boy's surgery next week, the one you've been preparing for months. I didn't want to distract you. I didn't want a child to die because you were worried about me." But Raymond shook his head, his face hardening again. "No, I don't believe you. This is just a story you and Samuel cooked up to cover your affair. Cancer. Convenient. Sympathetic. Impossible to disprove quickly." Maya stared at her husband, and something inside her finally broke. Not her spirit, but her hope. The hope that had sustained her through the pain and fear. The hope that Raymond would come back to her, would remember the man he used to be. That hope died in that moment, and what replaced it was a terrible, clear-eyed acceptance. "Get out of my house, you cheating whore," Raymond said, the words ugly in his mouth. "Take your bastard with you. I don't want either of you here." Maya closed her eyes, swaying on her feet. When she opened them again, they were dry. She'd cried all the tears she had. "The baby is yours, Raymond. She has your blood type, your nose, your stubborn heart. And I named her Hope, because that's what she gave me when I thought I had nothing left." "Get out," Raymond roared. "I have something to tell you," Maya tried one last time, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't want to hear your lies." Raymond turned his back on her, dismissing her, destroying her with his rejection. Maya moved slowly, painfully, toward their bedroom. She packed a small bag with trembling hands, some clothes, her medical records, the ultrasound photos of their daughter. She left behind her wedding album, their vacation photos, all the evidence of their happier days. When she came back downstairs, Raymond was standing by the window, his back rigid with anger. Maya looked at him one last time, memorizing the shape of him, the man she'd loved enough to die for. "I forgive you," she said softly. "I forgive you for not seeing me, for not believing me, for choosing your pride over our love. And I hope that one day, you'll forgive yourself." Then Maya walked out into the night, 7 months pregnant and carrying cancer in her body, sobbing so hard she could barely see the road ahead. She drove away from the only home she'd ever truly wanted, away from the man she'd loved with everything she had, toward an uncertain future that she knew, in her bones, she wouldn't survive. Behind her, in their beautiful house with its bougainvillea garden, Raymond Okoro stood alone in the darkness, convinced of his righteousness, blind to his tragedy, and entirely unaware that he'd just destroyed the last chance he'd ever have to make things right. 6 months passed like a slow death, each day bleeding into the next with the same grey emptiness. Raymond Okoro continued his life as if nothing had changed, as if he hadn't torn his world apart with his own hands. He performed surgeries with the same precision, attended conferences with the same confidence, and smiled for photographs with the same charm. But the house he returned to each night echoed with an absence that grew heavier with every passing week. He told his colleagues that Maya had gone to stay with family, that the pregnancy had been difficult and she needed her mother's care. They nodded sympathetically and didn't press for details. Nigerians understood family matters were private, that sometimes the spaces between words held more truth than the words themselves. But at night, alone in their bed, Raymond's certainty began to crack like dry earth in the harmattan season. He found Maya's things everywhere: her favorite coffee mug in the cabinet, her gardening gloves on the back porch, her reading glasses on the nightstand. Each discovery was a small accusation, a whisper asking, "What if you were wrong?" He pushed the thoughts away, rebuilding his righteous anger each morning like a wall. She had betrayed him. She had lied. She had driven him to this. But the wall grew harder to maintain as weeks turned to months, and the questions grew louder. Samuel Igwe no longer spoke to him at the hospital. They passed each other in corridors, and Samuel would look at him with such profound disappointment that Raymond felt like he was being X-rayed, all his failures exposed. Other colleagues began treating him differently too, their smiles not quite reaching their eyes. Raymond told himself it was paranoia, but he knew better. News traveled fast in the medical community. He tried calling Maya once, his pride finally bending under the weight of loneliness, but her phone was disconnected. He drove past her parents' house in Surulere, but the gate was locked and no one answered when he knocked. He told himself he didn't care, that he was just checking to ensure the baby was born safely, that it was his responsibility as a doctor if not as a husband. The truth was, he missed her. He missed the way she hummed while watering her plants. He missed her laughter, rare as it had become. He missed having someone to come home to, someone who looked at him like he was more than just Dr. Okoro, celebrated surgeon. Maya had seen him, really seen him, and he'd been too blind to see her back. One evening, 6 months to the day after Maya left, Raymond's phone rang. He was sitting in his study, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him, staring at a photograph from their wedding day. Maya had been radiant, her smile bright enough to outshine the Lagos sun. "Dr. Okoro?" The voice on the other end was familiar but subdued. "Samuel Igwe." Raymond's grip tightened on the phone. "What do you want?" There was a long pause, and Raymond heard Samuel take a deep breath. "I thought you should know. Maya died 2 days ago." The words didn't make sense at first. They were just sounds, syllables without meaning. Raymond's brain refused to process them, rejected them like a body rejects a foreign organ. "What?" The word came out strangled. "She died on Tuesday," Samuel continued, his voice thick with grief. "The cancer spread faster than we anticipated. She fought hard, Raymond. She fought so hard for that baby. She refused aggressive treatment during the pregnancy because she was afraid it would harm the child." "Your child?" Raymond stood abruptly, the chair falling backward with a crash. "You're lying. This is another one of your tricks." "She's dead, Raymond." Samuel's voice broke. "Maya is dead, and it's time you knew the truth. She never cheated on you. Not once. Not ever. I was helping her through chemotherapy. I was supporting her through a nightmare because her husband who took an oath to recognize suffering, couldn't see past his own ego to notice his wife was dying." The room tilted. Raymond gripped the edge of his desk, his knuckles white. No, she was making it up. She was lying to cover. She wasn't lying. Samuel's control finally snapped. "I have 6 months of medical records, Raymond. Oncology reports, chemotherapy schedules, MRI scans showing exactly how the cancer ravaged her body. She had stage 3 breast cancer that metastasized to her bones and lymph nodes. She was in agony, and she still chose to protect that baby. To protect you. To give you one last gift even after you threw her away like garbage. Raymond's legs gave out. He slid down the wall, the phone still pressed to his ear, unable to speak, unable to breathe. She made me promise not to tell you, Samuel continued, quieter now but no less devastating. Even at the end, even when she was dying, she made me promise to respect her wishes. She said you were too proud to hear it from anyone but her, and she tried so many times to tell you herself. She said you'd learn the truth eventually, and she hoped, God Raymond, she hoped, that it wouldn't destroy you. Where is she? Raymond's voice was barely a whisper. Where is my wife? She's at Lagos General. In the morgue. And before you ask, yes, the baby survived. A girl, born 2 weeks ago. 5 pounds, 3 ounces. Healthy despite everything. Maya held her for 6 hours before she slipped into a coma. She named her Hope. Hope. Maya's last gift. Raymond's daughter. The baby he'd called a bastard. The child he'd rejected before she'd even taken her first breath. I need to. Raymond couldn't finish the sentence. Need to what? Need to see Maya? Need to apologize to a corpse? Need to take back 6 months of mistakes that had cost him everything? There's a letter, Samuel said. Maya wrote it for you. The nurses have it at the maternity ward. Your daughter is there too. In the NICU. She's waiting for her father to come claim her. The call ended, leaving Raymond alone with his whiskey and his wedding photo and the crushing weight of truth that arrived too late to matter. He sat on his study floor for hours, unable to move, unable to think beyond the simple, devastating fact. Maya was dead, and he had killed her. Not with his hands, but with his suspicion, his pride, his unforgivable blindness. When morning came, grey and humid, Raymond finally moved. He showered, dressed in his best suit, the one Maya had bought him for their anniversary, and drove to Lagos General with hands that shook so badly he nearly crashed twice. The hospital where he was a god, where nurses and interns stepped aside when he walked past, where his name commanded instant respect. He walked through those doors now not as Dr. Raymond Okoro, celebrated surgeon, but as a man who had lost everything and was only just beginning to understand the magnitude of his loss. He found the maternity ward, found the head nurse who'd known him for years. Her face when she saw him was a mixture of pity and something else, something like disgust. Dr. Okoro, she said, her voice professionally neutral. We've been expecting you. My daughter, Raymond managed. I need to see my daughter. The nurse studied him for a long moment, and Raymond saw himself through her eyes. A man who'd abandoned his dying wife, who'd accused her of adultery while cancer ate her alive, who'd thrown her out while she was 7 months pregnant and fighting for her life. Follow me, the nurse finally said. She led him to the NICU, to a clear plastic bassinet where a tiny girl slept, her face peaceful, her little chest rising and falling with each breath. She had Maya's nose, Maya's delicate fingers, but when the baby stirred and opened her eyes, Raymond saw himself staring back. She has your eyes, the nurse said quietly, echoing words Maya must have written. Mrs. Okoro said you'd see it when you met her. Raymond's knees buckled. He caught himself on the edge of the bassinet, staring at this miracle, this innocent child who'd survived against all odds while her mother sacrificed everything. There's a letter, the nurse said, pulling an envelope from the pocket of her scrubs. Mrs. Okoro left it for you. She made me promise to give it to you when you came. Raymond took the envelope with trembling hands. Maya's handwriting on the front. For Raymond, with all the love I have left. He couldn't open it there, surrounded by other people's joy, other families beginning their stories while his was ending. He stumbled to a private consultation room, closed the door, and with shaking hands, finally read his wife's last words. Raymond, if you're reading this, it means I didn't survive long enough to tell you everything face to face. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for so many things, but mostly I'm sorry that my time ran out before I could make you understand. She has your eyes, Raymond. Our daughter. I named her Hope because that's what she gave me in my darkest days. Hope that something beautiful could come from all this pain. Hope that you'd find your way back to being the man I fell in love with. Hope that maybe, somehow, love would be enough. I need you to know the truth, even though I think Samuel has probably told you by now. I had cancer. Stage 3 breast cancer that spread faster than anyone expected. I found out 3 months into the pregnancy, and yes, I kept it from you. Not because I didn't trust you or love you, but because I knew you. I knew you'd make me terminate the pregnancy to start aggressive treatment. I knew you'd try to save me and sacrifice our daughter. But Raymond, I was dying anyway. The doctors gave me less than a year even with treatment. So I made a choice. I chose to give you hope. I chose to give our daughter a chance at life, even if it cost me mine. Samuel Egui was never anything but my doctor and my friend. He held my hand through chemotherapy. He drove me to appointments when I was too weak to drive myself. He sat with me in waiting rooms while you saved other people's children and forgot about your own. He was kind when I needed kindness desperately. You accused me of betraying you, but Raymond, we betrayed each other long before that night. I betrayed you by not fighting harder to be seen, by accepting your absence as normal, by convincing myself that your work was more important than our marriage. And you betrayed me by forgetting that your first patient should have been the woman you promised to love in sickness and in health. I forgive you. I forgive you for the accusations, for the words you can never take back, for sending me away when I needed you most. I forgive you because holding on to anger would be like carrying stones in my pockets while I'm already drowning. And I forgive you because I still love you, despite everything. Love doesn't end just because it hurts. But Raymond, you need to forgive yourself. You need to look at our daughter and see redemption, not reminder. You need to be the father I know you can be, even if you forgot how to be the husband I needed. Hope doesn't know yet that her mother is gone. She doesn't know that she cost me my life. She only knows warmth and milk and the sound of my heartbeat that accompanied her for 9 months. Don't let her grow up thinking she was a burden. Don't let her carry the weight of my choice. She was never a burden, Raymond. She was my last gift to you. My last attempt to leave something beautiful in a world that took everything else. Please love her. Love her with all the passion you poured into your career. Love her with all the attention you gave your patients. Love her the way you forgot to love me. Give her the father I wanted you to be, the father I still believe you can become. I'm not strong enough to fight anymore. The cancer won. But hope, she won too. She's alive and perfect and so completely yours. Don't waste this second chance, Raymond. Don't let pride or guilt or grief keep you from being present in her life. And when she's old enough to ask about me, tell her the truth. Tell her I loved her from the moment I knew she existed. Tell her I fought for her until my last breath. Tell her that sometimes love means sacrifice, and I'd make the same choice 1,000 times over. I'm sorry I couldn't be strong enough to stay. I'm sorry I'm leaving you to raise her alone. But I'm not sorry for Hope. I'll never be sorry for her. You were my love story, Raymond, even if it had a sad ending. Thank you for the happy years. Thank you for the dreams, even the ones we never got to fulfill. And thank you for Hope. She's proof that something good can come from even the darkest times. Be happy, my love. Find peace. And when you look at our daughter's face, remember that she's made of both of us, your brilliance and my heart. Raise her well. All my love, until the end of time. Maya. P.S. I left her my coral beads from our wedding. One day, when she's old enough, give them to her and tell her they're from a mother who loved her more than life itself. Raymond read the letter 3 times, then 4, then 5, until the words blurred through his tears and Maya's voice faded into echo. He sat in that consultation room for over an hour, holding the letter against his chest, feeling the weight of her forgiveness like a boulder on his soul. Forgiveness should have been relief, but it wasn't. It was condemnation. She'd forgiven him, but he could never forgive himself. Finally, when he had no tears left, When his body was empty of everything but grief, Raymond stood. He folded Maya's letter carefully and placed it in his jacket pocket, right over his heart where it would stay. Then he walked back to the NICU, to the daughter he didn't deserve, the child born of sacrifice and love and his own catastrophic failure. The nurse looked up as he approached. "Are you ready to hold her?" Raymond nodded, unable to speak. The nurse carefully lifted Hope from her bassinet, placed her in Raymond's arms, and in that moment, as he looked down at his daughter's face, Raymond Okoro finally understood what he'd lost. Not just a wife. Not just a partner. But a woman who'd loved him so completely that she died to give him this gift. A woman who'd seen his failures and loved him anyway. A woman who'd used her last breaths to absolve him of sins he could never forgive. "Hello, Hope," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm your father. And I promise you, I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of your mother's sacrifice. I promise I'll never forget her. And I promise that you will always know how much she loved you." The baby stirred at his voice, opened her eyes, his eyes, and Raymond fell to his knees again, holding his daughter close, destroyed by the realization that his paranoia and pride had stolen his last months with a woman who'd loved him until her final breath. Raymond Okoro left the hospital that day carrying two things: his newborn daughter and a guilt so crushing it threatened to suffocate him with every breath. The nurses had shown him how to hold Hope properly, how to support her tiny head, how to prepare formula since Maya was no longer there to nurse her. They spoke in gentle, patient tones, as if he were a new father learning these things with joy rather than a man drowning in regret. He drove home with Hope secured in a car seat the hospital provided, driving so carefully that other Lagos drivers honked and swerved around him impatiently. Every pothole made him flinch, every sudden break sent panic through his chest. This fragile life in the back seat was all he had left of Maya, and the responsibility of it terrified him. The house felt different when he carried Hope across the threshold. The silence that had been merely empty before now felt accusatory. Maya's absence screamed from every corner, her empty chair at the dining table, her dead plants by the window, her slippers still tucked under their bed where she'd left them 6 months ago. Raymond set up the portable crib in his bedroom, fumbling with the instructions, his hands still shaking. Hope began to cry, a thin, desperate sound that sent him into immediate panic. Was she hungry? Sick? In pain? How was he supposed to know? Maya would have known. Maya had read all the parenting books while he'd been too busy saving other people's lives to prepare for his own child. He heated the formula, tested it on his wrist like the nurse had shown him, and fed his daughter while she stared up at him with those knowing eyes. His eyes. But the way she looked at him reminded him of Maya. Patient, forgiving, seeing something in him he wasn't sure existed anymore. That first night, Raymond didn't sleep. Every sound Hope made sent him rushing to her side, checking if she was breathing, if she was too hot or too cold, if he was failing her already like he'd failed her mother. At 3 a.m, exhausted and overwhelmed, he found himself standing in Maya's closet, breathing in the faint scent of her perfume that still clung to her clothes. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the empty room, to the ghost of his wife, to the space where her forgiveness lived but couldn't reach him. "Maya, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to do this without you." The morning brought Samuel Igwe to his door. Raymond opened it, Hope in his arms, and the two men stood face to face for the first time since that terrible night. "May I come in?" Samuel asked quietly. Raymond stepped aside, unable to form words. They sat in the living room, the same room where Raymond had made his accusations, and the weight of that memory pressed down on both of them. "I came to see how you're managing," Samuel said, his eyes on Hope. "And to give you these." He pulled out a thick folder from his bag. Maya's medical records. Complete documentation of her diagnosis, treatment, everything. She wanted you to have them. She said you'd need proof to believe the truth. Raymond took the folder with trembling hands and opened it. Page after page of evidence he'd been too proud to see 6 months ago. Oncology reports dated from Maya's 3rd month of pregnancy, chemotherapy schedules, MRI scans showing tumors spreading through her body, consultation notes describing how she'd refused aggressive treatment to protect the baby. One note, written by Samuel himself, made Raymond's vision blur. Patient exhibits remarkable strength and determination. Despite prognosis, she remains focused on ensuring safe delivery. She speaks often of her husband with love, making excuses for his absence. She believes he will come back to her when he understands. This reviewer fears she is running out of time for that reunion. She never stopped believing in you, Samuel said softly. Even when you abandoned her, even when you called her those terrible things, she told me you were just scared and confused. She made me promise not to hate you. She said you'd hate yourself enough for both of us. Raymond closed the folder, unable to read more. I accused you of sleeping with my wife while you were trying to save her life. Yes, you did. I threw her out of our home while she was dying. Yes. I called our daughter a bastard. Samuel's jaw tightened. Yes, you did all of those things. And Maya forgave you for every single one. The question is, can you forgive yourself? No, Raymond said simply, honestly. I can never forgive myself. I don't deserve forgiveness. Maybe not, Samuel agreed, and his honesty was somehow worse than condemnation. But that little girl deserves a father who's present, not a ghost consumed by guilt. Maya didn't sacrifice herself so you could spend the rest of your life drowning in regret. Hope stirred in Raymond's arms, making small noises. Samuel reached out slowly, asking permission with his eyes, and Raymond handed her over. Samuel held her with practiced ease, his face softening as he looked down at her. She looks like both of you, Samuel observed. Maya's nose, your eyes, her delicate features, your stubborn chin. He looked up at Raymond. She deserves to know both parts of her heritage. The brilliant surgeon and the woman who loved so completely she died for it. I don't know how to be a father, Raymond confessed, the words torn from somewhere deep. I don't know how to do this. Neither did I when my son was born, Samuel said. No one does at first. You learn. You try. You fail sometimes and try again. But you have to be present for it. You have to show up. He paused, weighing his next words. Something you didn't do for Maya. The truth stung, but Raymond didn't flinch from it. He deserved every accusation, every reminder of his failures. Samuel stayed for an hour, showing Raymond techniques for soothing a crying baby, explaining feeding schedules, answering questions Raymond was embarrassed to ask. Before he left, he turned at the door. Maya's funeral is tomorrow. 2:00 at Abundant Life Church in Surulere. Her family wants hope there. They want to see the granddaughter their daughter died bringing into the world. Samuel's voice hardened slightly. And they want to meet the man who broke their daughter's heart. After Samuel left, Raymond sat alone with hope, understanding that tomorrow he would face not just Maya's family but the full scope of his destruction. Tomorrow he would have to look into the eyes of people who'd loved Maya since birth, and explain why he'd let her die alone. The next morning, Raymond dressed Hope in a white christening gown the nurses had included in her bag. Maya must have bought it, planning for a future she'd never see. He put on his black suit, the one he wore to funerals of patients he couldn't save. He'd worn it too many times in his career, but never had it felt so heavy. Abundant Life Church was packed. Raymond hadn't realized how many people Maya had touched. Former students from the primary school where she'd volunteered, neighbors from their street, women from her book club, members of her church choir. They all turned to stare as Raymond entered with Hope, and he saw his judgment reflected in dozens of pairs of eyes. Maya's casket was closed, surrounded by white roses, her favorite. A large photograph of her sat on an easel beside it, capturing her radiant smile from their wedding day. Raymond stopped in front of it, Hope cradled against his chest, and the sob that broke from him echoed through the sanctuary. I'm sorry, he whispered to the photograph, to Maya's smile, to the memory of love he destroyed. I'm so sorry, my love. I'm so sorry. Maya's mother, Mrs. Adeyemi, approached slowly. She was a tall woman with iron-gray hair and eyes red from weeks of crying. She looked at Raymond, then at Hope, and something in her expression cracked. May I hold her? she asked, her voice thick. Raymond carefully transferred Hope to her grandmother's arms. Mrs. Adeyemi stared at the baby, tears streaming down her face, tracing features that must have reminded her of her daughter. "She has Maya's nose," Mrs. Adeyemi whispered. "And her gentle spirit. I can already see it." She looked up at Raymond, and the pain in her eyes was a mirror of his own. "Maya called me the night you threw her out. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. She told me what you said, what you accused her of." Raymond's throat closed. "Mrs. Adeyemi, She also told me she forgave you," Maya's mother continued. "She made me promise not to hate you. She said you were the love of her life, and love meant forgiveness even when it hurt." Mrs. Adeyemi's voice dropped to something cold and hard. "But I'm not my daughter, Dr. Okoro. I don't have her generous heart. You killed her with your suspicion and your pride and your blindness. And I will never forgive you for that." The words landed like blows, each one justified, each one true. Raymond nodded, accepting them. "I understand. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to honor Maya's memory by being the father Hope deserves." "See that you do," Mrs. Adeyemi said sharply. "Because if you fail that child the way you failed my daughter, I will take her from you. Do you understand me?" "Yes, ma'am." The service began, and Raymond listened to person after person eulogize Maya. They spoke of her kindness, her generosity, her quiet strength. They talked about her volunteer work, her love of children, her beautiful singing voice. They painted a picture of a woman Raymond had loved but never fully appreciated. A woman who'd lived a rich life beyond being his wife while he'd been too consumed with his own importance to notice. When it was Raymond's turn to speak, he walked to the pulpit on legs that barely supported him. He looked out at the congregation, at all these people who'd loved Maya better than he had, and words failed him. "I don't deserve to stand here," he began, his voice cracking. "I don't deserve to speak about a woman I failed so completely. But Maya asked me in her letter to tell our daughter the truth when she was old enough. So I'm starting now, in front of all of you who loved her." He took a shaking breath. "I was a fool. I was so consumed with my career, so obsessed with being the celebrated surgeon, that I forgot to see the woman who made my success possible. Maya supported every late night, every missed dinner, every broken promise. She built our home, tended our garden, created a sanctuary I was too busy to appreciate." Raymond's hands gripped the pulpit. "When she needed me most, when she was fighting cancer while carrying our child, I wasn't there. I was too important, too busy saving other people while my own wife was dying. And when she tried to tell me the truth, when she needed me to listen, I chose my pride over her words. I chose to believe the worst of her because it was easier than admitting I'd been a terrible husband." The congregation was silent, the kind of silence that judges and condemns. "Maya forgave me in her letter. She forgave me with her last words, with her last thoughts. But I'm standing here to say that I don't forgive myself. I can't. What I did is unforgivable. I destroyed the most precious thing in my life through my own arrogance and blindness." Raymond looked at Hope, sleeping in her grandmother's arms. "But Maya gave me a gift I don't deserve. A second chance wrapped in a tiny body with her nose and my eyes. She named her Hope, and I think Maya was hoping I could become the man I should have been. The man who shows up. The man who sees. The man who loves without conditions and without distraction." His voice broke completely. "I'm going to fail sometimes. I'm going to make mistakes. But I promise you, Maya, and I promise everyone here who loved you, I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the sacrifice you made. I will raise our daughter to know how much you loved her. I will make sure Hope understands that her mother was the bravest, most selfless person I've ever known. And I will never, never let another day pass without being present for the people I love." Raymond stepped down from the pulpit, his face wet with tears, and returned to his seat. The rest of the service passed in a blur. They sang Maya's favorite hymns, and Raymond's voice joined the chorus, cracking and broken but present. At the cemetery, as they lowered Maya into the ground, Raymond held Hope close and whispered promises to both of them, to the dead and to the living. "I'll do better. I'll be better. For both of you." After everyone left, Raymond stayed at the graveside, Hope sleeping against his chest. He told Maya about their daughter, how she'd smiled for the first time that morning, how she had a powerful set of lungs when she was hungry, how she gripped his finger with surprising strength. "She's going to be something special," Raymond said to the freshly turned earth. "Just like her mother. And I'm going to make sure she knows you, Maya. I'm going to tell her stories about you every night. I'm going to show her your garden when the bougainvillea blooms. I'm going to teach her your favorite songs. You won't be a ghost or a tragedy. You'll be real to her. I promise." As the sun began to set, painting the Lagos sky in shades of orange and purple, Raymond finally stood to leave. He turned back once, looking at the headstone they'd placed. Maya Okoro, beloved daughter, wife, and mother. She loved fiercely and forgave freely. "Goodbye, my love," Raymond whispered. "Thank you for Hope. Thank you for forgiving me. And I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I learned to see you too late." He walked away carrying his daughter, carrying his grief, carrying the weight of forgiveness he'd never fully accept but would spend a lifetime trying to honor. This funeral scene has me in tears. If you're feeling the weight of Raymond's regret, smash that like button and subscribe to Folktales by Inaya. Comment: can someone truly change after such tragedy? The final part reveals what Raymond does next, and it's powerful. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Turn on notifications. 3 years passed, and Raymond Okoro became a different man. Not through grand gestures or sudden transformations, but through the small daily choices that accumulate into a life remade. He reduced his surgery schedule, shocking his colleagues who'd never known him to prioritize anything above his career. He hired a nanny, Mrs. Patience, a kind woman in her 50s who'd raised 6 children of her own, but he made sure to be home every evening by 6. No more conferences unless absolutely necessary. No more late nights unless a life hung in the balance. Hope came first. Always. The house that had echoed with Maya's absence slowly filled with different sounds. Hope's laughter, her tiny feet running through halls, her voice calling, "Papa," when he walked through the door. Raymond maintained Maya's garden, learning to tend the bougainvillea his wife had loved, making sure it bloomed bright purple every season. Hope would sit beside him, her small hands in the dirt, and he'd tell her about the woman who'd planted these flowers. "Your mama loved beautiful things," Raymond would say, brushing soil from Hope's fingers. "She said gardens teach us patience, that the most beautiful blooms take time and care and attention." Hope was too young to fully understand, but she'd nod seriously, her eyes, his eyes, bright with curiosity. "Mama pretty. The most beautiful woman I ever knew," Raymond would answer honestly. "And when you're older, I'll tell you all about her." Raymond kept Maya's letter in his study, reading it whenever he felt himself slipping into old patterns, whenever work threatened to consume him again, whenever he forgot why he'd changed. The paper was worn now from handling, Maya's words faded but never forgotten. He also kept a journal, writing to Maya every night after Hope went to bed. He told her about their daughter's milestones, her first words, her first steps, her personality emerging like a flower opening to the sun. He wrote about his struggles, his failures, his small victories in learning to be present. It was a one-sided conversation, but it kept Maya alive in their home, made her part of their daily lives rather than a tragedy they'd survived. Samuel Igwe became a regular presence in their lives. The distance between the two men gradually closed, replaced by a careful friendship built on shared love for Maya and commitment to Hope's well-being. Samuel brought his own son, Daniel, for playdates, and the children became fast friends while the fathers learned to forgive each other. Raymond for his accusations, Samuel for not fighting harder to make Raymond listen. One evening, as they watched the children play in Maya's garden, Samuel spoke quietly. "She'd be proud of you, you know, Maya. She'd see what you've become." Raymond shook his head. "I'm only doing what I should have done from the beginning." "Maybe," Samuel agreed. "But most men don't get a second chance, and fewer still do anything meaningful with it. You did. That counts for something. Mrs. Adeyemi visited every Sunday, her initial coldness slowly thawing as she saw Raymond's commitment to Hope. She taught him Maya's recipes, showed him how to braid Hope's hair, shared stories about Maya's childhood that Raymond had never heard. The forgiveness she'd sworn she'd never grant began creeping in despite herself, not because Raymond deserved it, but because Hope needed a grandfather-grandmother connection, and Mrs. Adeyemi couldn't deny her granddaughter that love. You're different, she told Raymond one Sunday, watching him patiently help Hope color inside the lines. Maya saw this man inside you. I never understood what she saw until now. I wish she'd lived to see it, Raymond said quietly. She's seeing it, Mrs. Adeyemi replied with certainty. I believe that. On Hope's 3rd birthday, Raymond organized a small celebration in their garden. Samuel and Daniel came, Mrs. Adeyemi and some of Maya's family, a few of Hope's playschool friends. They sang Happy Birthday beneath the bougainvillea, and Hope blew out her candles with Maya's smile on her face. Later, after the guests left and Hope was asleep clutching a new stuffed elephant, Raymond sat alone in the garden with a glass of wine and Maya's photograph. It was their ritual on special occasions. Raymond would talk to the picture as if Maya were sitting beside him. She's 3 today, he told the photograph. Can you believe it? 3 years since you gave her to me. Since you left. He took a sip of wine, gathering his thoughts. She's so much like you, Maya. She has your kindness, your patience with people. She shares her toys without being asked. She cries when she sees other children hurt. She has your gentle heart. Raymond smiled sadly. But she has my stubbornness too. When she decides she wants something, she doesn't give up. Mrs. Patience says she's exhausting. I told her that's karma for how I used to be. He was quiet for a moment, listening to the night sounds of Lagos, distant traffic, a neighbor's music, insects singing in the darkness. I met someone, Raymond said suddenly, the words he'd been carrying for weeks. At the hospital. A pediatrician named Grace. She's kind and intelligent, and she makes me laugh. Hope likes her. Mrs. Adeyemi likes her. Everyone says it's time I moved forward. He stared at Maya's picture, at her wedding day smile, searching for permission or condemnation. But I feel guilty even thinking about it. Like I'd be betraying you somehow. Like 3 years isn't enough penance for what I did. Raymond's voice cracked. Is it okay, Maya? Is it okay if I try to be happy again? Or do I owe you a lifetime of loneliness? The photograph, of course, didn't answer. But Raymond thought about Maya's letter, about her final words telling him to be happy, to find peace, to not waste the second chance she'd given him. You told me not to let guilt keep me from being present in Hope's life, Raymond continued. But you also deserve to be remembered, to stay important in our story. I don't know how to balance those things. I don't know how to move forward without leaving you behind. He sat there until the wine was gone and the night grew deep, wrestling with questions that had no easy answers. Finally he stood, touched Maya's photograph gently, and whispered, I'll always love you. Whatever comes next, that never changes. You were my first love, my greatest love, and the reason I learned how to love at all. Inside, Raymond checked on Hope one last time before bed. She was sprawled across her mattress, her stuffed elephant clutched tight, peaceful in sleep the way only children can be. He adjusted her blanket, kissed her forehead, and stood there watching her breathe. This miracle, this gift, this living proof that even the worst failures can produce something beautiful. The next morning, Raymond made a decision. He would start slowly with Grace, see where things led without pressure or expectations. He would continue therapy. He'd been seeing a counselor for 2 years now, working through his guilt and learning to forgive himself. He would keep writing to Maya, keep her memory alive for Hope, keep tending the garden she'd loved. But he would also allow himself the possibility of happiness. Not to replace what he'd had, but to honor it by living fully, by being present, by choosing love when it appeared rather than hiding behind grief and regret. At the hospital that day, Raymond performed a delicate pediatric surgery. A 10-year-old boy with a congenital heart defect. The surgery took 6 hours, requiring every bit of his skill and concentration. But when it was over, when the boy was stable and his parents were crying with relief, Raymond didn't stay to bask in their gratitude or accept their praise. He went home to Hope. "Papa," she squealed when he walked through the door at 6:30, running to him with her arms outstretched. Raymond scooped her up, spinning her around, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair. "Hello, my beautiful girl. Did you have a good day? We made paintings. Mine has purple flowers like Mama's garden." "I can't wait to see it," Raymond said, meaning it completely. They had dinner together, mac and cheese, Hope's favorite. They read 3 bedtime stories, and Raymond answered her endless questions with patience he'd learned through trial and error. When Hope finally settled to sleep, he kissed her goodnight and whispered the words he said every evening. "Your mama loved you so much. And so do I." Later, in his study, Raymond opened his journal and wrote, "Dear Maya, Hope turned 3 yesterday. I wish you could have seen her face when she blew out her candles. I wish you could have heard her laughter when the kids played hide and seek in your garden. I wish you were here for all of it. But you're not, and I'm learning to accept that while still keeping you present. It's a strange balance, honoring your memory while building a future you're not physically part of. I think I'm getting better at it. I hope so. I think I'm ready to try again, Maya. To open my heart to the possibility of love. Not to replace you. No one could replace you, but to continue the journey of becoming the man you saw in me even when I couldn't see him myself. Grace asked me to coffee, and I said yes. We're meeting next week. I'm terrified. I'm excited. I feel guilty and hopeful in equal measure. Is this how second chances are supposed to feel? Hope asks about you constantly now. She knows your face from photographs. She knows you loved purple flowers and singing hymns. She knows you were brave and beautiful and that you gave her life with your last strength. When she's older, I'll tell her the harder truths too. How I failed you, how you forgave me, how your sacrifice made me better. She deserves to know all of it. I love you, Maya. I will always love you. You were the love that taught me how to love. And because of you, because of what you gave me, I'm learning how to live again. Thank you for hope. Thank you for forgiveness. Thank you for seeing something in me worth saving. Forever yours, Raymond. He closed the journal and sat in the quiet of his study, surrounded by medical textbooks and family photographs and memories of who he'd been and who he was becoming. Outside, Lagos breathed its nightly rhythm. Millions of lives intersecting, millions of stories unfolding, millions of people trying their best with the chances they'd been given. Raymond Okoro knew he'd never fully forgive himself for what he'd done. The guilt would always be there, a scar on his soul that ached in quiet moments. But he also knew that Maya hadn't sacrificed herself so he could spend his life paralyzed by regret. She'd given him hope, both the child and the concept, and the greatest way to honor her was to embrace both. So he would try. He would fail sometimes. He would get back up and try again. He would be present for his daughter, open to new love, committed to the man Maya had believed he could become. Not because he deserved redemption, but because Hope deserved a father who'd learned from his mistakes. Because Maya's sacrifice deserved to produce something more than endless mourning. As Raymond prepared for bed, he looked once more at Maya's photograph on his nightstand. "Good night, my love," he whispered, as he did every night. "Thank you for everything. Watch over us." And somewhere in the universe, in whatever place souls go when they leave this world, perhaps Maya smiled. Perhaps she saw the man she'd always known existed beneath the pride and ambition. Perhaps she saw him finally learning the lesson she'd tried to teach him. That love requires presence, that success means nothing if you have no one to share it with, that the greatest achievements happen not in operating rooms but in the small, daily moments of showing up for the people who matter most. 3 years after Maya's death, Raymond Okoro was learning to live again. Not forgetting but integrating. Not erasing the past, but building on it. Not seeking redemption he didn't deserve, but honoring sacrifice with transformation. Hope slept peacefully in her room. Maya rested in the ground, her memory alive in flowers and stories. Raymond stood at the crossroads of grief and possibility, finally understanding that he could hold both, that remembering Maya and moving forward weren't opposites but two parts of the same journey. It was a journey that would last the rest of his life. A journey of being present, of choosing love, of teaching his daughter by example what it means to learn from our failures and grow into our better selves. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Wow. Raymond's journey from tragedy to transformation is powerful. If this story moved you, smash that like button and subscribe to Folktales by Inaya. Drop a comment. What lesson hit you hardest from this story? Share this with someone who needs to hear about second chances and being present for the people we love. Turn on notifications for more powerful stories that will change how you see life. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.